Okay, raise your hand if you wish you had a customized roadmap of how to live your life to the fullest, how to achieve your highest potential, and how to be your most authentic self. I'm over here raising my hand too. And the good news is, I think we may have cracked the code with human design. Now, human design is a synthesis of ancient wisdom and modern science that sheds light on a person's energetic makeup, as well as giving us specific tools that we can actually use to live our happiest and healthiest lives. It doesn't change who we are, it actually teaches us who we are. We use human design in our business on a daily basis. Like, this is that powerful. Now, my guest today is Erin Claire Jones. She uses human design to help thousands of individuals and companies step into their work and their lives as their truest selves and to live up to their highest potential. Now, I actually experienced her work firsthand when I joined the same mastermind as her, and she led me through a human design training that shifted so much for me. She also helped us apply human design to our families, and some of the things that she shared about my daughter's human designs have absolutely changed the way that I show up as their mom. Her work as a guide, coach, and speaker has attracted a growing community of over 250,000 people who turn to her teachings for practical tools, digestible tips, and deeper self-knowledge that they can access to live with greater ease and authenticity every single day. With work featured in Forbes, Mind, Body, Green, and Well and Good, as well as being featured on over 260 podcasts and having spoken to crowds all over the world, Erin's insights are highly sought after because she makes human design pragmatic, tangible, accessible, and immediately applicable to everyday life. Get your own super personalized, hyper-specific human design blueprint at jennakutcher.com/human design, where you can access a deeper, authentic perspective of who you truly are, what makes you tick, and what activates and motivates you. Learning human design in Erin's blueprint guide allowed me to discover not only more about who I am, what has led me to where I am now, but also what will get me to the next level and beyond. So again, head to jennakutcher.com/human design now to take action on the life that you want with clarity and direction. Plus, when you dive into human design with Erin, I have an exclusive bonus for you. You can learn how to create a fully authentic and actionable vision board through guided exercise and clear prompts that I am leading you on. I want to help you make real moves towards the life that you want to live, and not just the life that looks good on the outside, but a life that feels good. So I have created a free bonus for you. Again, if you head to jennakutcher.com/human design, you can get your personalized blueprint guide plus the free vision board exercise that I'm putting together for you. I cannot wait for you to hear Erin explain how we can use human design to create a new way of work, a new path towards success, and a new perspective on living as you truly are. Let's dive on in. Okay, Erin, I'm completely obsessed with you and your work, but in order for our listeners to love you as much as I do, they also need to understand what you do. And one of the things that I have always been curious about is that, like, we are so complex as humans, and sometimes putting titles in boxes can feel limiting to people. And so let's kick this off with, how is human design different from things like the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs?
Yeah, great question. So, the first way that it's different is that human design is a system based on your time, date, and place of birth. So, you're not answering questions on an assessment. You input those three pieces of data and you get a wild looking chart that holds so much intricate, specific information about you. And I also just want to say, for my skeptics, because inevitably I'm sure there'll be many, I think what matters most to me is not whether human design is true, but whether it's useful. And so wherever you are, just listening and seeing kind of if it lands with you. I have worked with many companies and many skeptical people, and they actually tend to love it. I think another way in which it's different is that it's so highly specific. It's not just about being grouped into one type. There are hundreds of thousands of possible configurations. And so your kind of way of operating in the world is totally unique to you. And then I think the last piece that I'd share, and this is what really drew me to human design, is that it's so practical. It's not just about inundating you with information that you have no idea to know how to work with it, but rather it gives you tools to actually implement into your life, into your business, into motherhood, into your daily operations, whatever that thing is.
Oh my gosh, yes. So it's so interesting because I encountered human design and we were on a call. So
Yeah.
Erin and I met in a mastermind, CEO Mama, And I was like really intrigued by just like, what is this and how does it apply? And I'm curious if you see this, Erin, but I think a lot of people might go into human design like maybe wanting to know themselves better. And it's crazy because I can like confidently say I use human design and what I've learned from it and learned about it in work, in marriage, in motherhood, in relationships, in decision making. Like it is like infiltrated my reality in such an amazing way. So I'm super curious, like, how did you get into human design? What was your entry point?
Yeah, and I just want to say yes. It usually starts with us, and then we're just like, but how do our kids operate, and how do our parents and our partners?
Yes.
And it's like the most powerful tool I've found to really understand our differences and how to work with them, which brings us so much closer together. So I have been working with human design since 2015. I discovered it very serendipitously. I was living in New York City. I went to a friend's gathering and sat next to a stranger who asked to do a human design reading. I never heard of human design, but I was like, okay, tell me everything you see. And he gave me the most accurate, insightful reading I'd ever received. It felt like he like put words to things I'd always felt but never stepped into. But it also felt like he really called me out because at that point in my life, I was 25. I was not living my design. I was trying to be everything but what my design suggested. And he really invited me into a new way of doing things. And I think I would have kept exploring human design, but he actually ended that conversation by saying, Erin, I think you're meant to do this. Which was so crazy. And he invited me into building a business with him and studying with him. And it was just such a cosmic moment. You know, I wonder some days, like, what if I hadn't gone to that gathering? What if I hadn't met that person? Like, it totally changed the like next 10 years of my life. So anyways, that's how it all began. There are many other rocky and wonderful moments in between, but that was kind of the invitation into human design. And it was at a time where human design was not at all cool, not at all well known. So I feel very lucky that it has grown in the way that it has, because I don't think I could have ever imagined it being known in the way it is now.
Okay. I want to dive into something you just said because
Yeah.
I honestly think that so many listeners can resonate with this right now. I feel like there is something happening, a shift, an awakening, whatever it is, where women are feeling out of alignment. Like
Yeah.
with what they're doing today, they couldn't imagine doing that same thing 5 years from now. Or they're wondering, how the heck did I end up here? Or what is my purpose? Or like, it's just this
So true.
incongruence that I think a lot of people are feeling right now, especially women at a similar stage of life as us. So talk to me about how human design plays in that, because you kind of reference like I was totally living outside of my human design without even realizing it. And honestly, when you said that, I was like, I think that's a lot of listeners right now.
I think you're so right. I think people are growing increasingly intolerant to just like working in a way that doesn't work for them.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like where they're like, oh, this really doesn't work. This doesn't feel good. This job, this relationship, whatever it is. And I think what human design offers us is a pathway to working in a way that really does work well for us. It's like, oh, like what I discovered in that moment was that like I wasn't actually meant to be this like hustler, super intense doer. Like I was much better served to be like a leader, a guide, a teacher with like lots of rest and ebbing and flowing energy. You know, with your design, you're meant to be so multi-passionate. Like you just can't be confined into one box. And so I think that people are just like, what hasn't been working is just becoming so apparent. Yeah. And I think human design often offers the permission slip we need to just like do things in a way that works for us, even if we've seen no one else do it that way before.
Yes. Okay. Walk us through the main types.
Okay.
Just because I'm curious if my listeners can start guessing maybe like what their type is through your descriptions. And then we can kind of dive deeper because it is super helpful to see how this plays into somebody's life and just like how it gives you tactical things you can walk away with and actually utilize. So let's start with the types first.
Okay. So in human design, there are 5 types. It's often the best place to begin. There are manifesting generators, projectors, reflectors, and manifestors. Our type really speaks to how we can best use our energy, but also how we can best create opportunities. And your daughters are both manifesting generators. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So let me just start with that type because you're a manifesting generator. So are both your daughters, a family full of them. So manifesting generators are the multi-passionate doers. These are people that cannot be confined into one box in their careers and lives. Like they are meant to try many things. Things have to stay interesting and exciting. They are ever evolving shapeshifters, like always wanting to kind of reinvent themselves. So a big lesson for you is giving yourself permission to pivot and not stick with the same thing forever, because you just can't, one box can't contain all of who you are. Another piece, and I've so felt this in my interactions with you, is that when you're lit up by what you're doing, your enthusiasm emanates and lifts up everybody around you. And so it's to everybody's benefit, your husband, your kids, that you're really lit up by what you're working on and how you're spending your time. And the last piece that I would share, actually two more pieces quickly. One is that you're very efficient, faster than most. And so you might often feel a little bit disappointed that others can't move quite as fast as you. And then the second piece is that you also are not meant to chase after opportunities. The right things will show up in your world, and your only job is to trust your gut to kind of know what you feel naturally pulled towards.
So good. Okay.
How does that feel?
Manifesting generators.
Yeah.
Listen, if you are a listener and you're nodding your head, that might be you. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the next type?
Then we've got generators, which are very similar, also very natural doers, but they might more enjoy diving deeply into one thing and then the next. So it's less about kind of the multi-passionate and more this very steadfast, dedicated, committed energy. Similar to manifesting generators, the more lit up they are, the more energy they have, the more magnetic they are. And so a big lesson for them is learning that it is not selfish to prioritize their desires and use up their energy in ways that light them up. It's actually the best thing for everybody. And like manifesting generators, they're also meant to let things come to them. So then we've got projectors. I'm a projector. I also am a manifesting generator daughter. Projectors are really here to be leaders, guides, advisors, teachers, not here to do all the doing. That was the big lesson for me. Our energy ebbs and flows, and our gift is really in how we see the world and how sensitive we are to others, and not in how much we can do. These are often very natural coaches, leaders, guides, therapists. They're often really good at asking the right questions. And the right opportunities are the ones that you're invited into. Somebody really sees your unique gifts and they really invite you to share them. Then we've got manifestors. Manifestors are very innovative, disruptive forces. Their gift is getting things started. Not doing all the doing to keep the thing alive, just getting the ball rolling. They're often very provocative, just like here to just like spark the world into new ways of doing things. And their energy can also ebb and flow, where they might be on fire for a month and then they kind of pull back and rest. And their strategy is about initiating. They're the only type that is just here to like start the thing and just do it when the urge arises within them. And then finally, the last type is a reflector. This is the most rare type. These people are our collective mirrors, people that are so sensitive to their environment and mirroring back what they're around. And so they must be such ruthless curators of who they're spending time with and where they're spending time, because they're going to take it all in. And they're super fluid. They will have days where they feel like manifesting generators, projectors, manifestors. And so their job is to just honor whatever feels like them that day, knowing it's all them.
That's so good. I just am like imagining listeners trying to like figure out which one they are. And I mean, you don't have to do it in that way. We have a way that you can figure out which one you are. So I want to know, what are the results that you get when you figure out which type you are, and like how does that actually impact your life? So again, you kind of said it's not just like a bunch of information spewed at you, but it helps. So walk us through like once you know your type, you actually know a lot more than just that.
Correct. So once you look up your design, there's so much information that you can get. So first you can understand like how are you designed to structure your days? For me as a projector, I know that like I'm not really meant to work long days. I need lots of space and breaks in between things. So it'll give you more sense of like, how do I actually structure that? For example, for you, I would say, because doing what lights you up gives you so much energy, I would put those things before doing the things that you really don't enjoy, just so that energy will kind of spill over and help you do those things too. It offers us that. It also offers us what we call our strategy. So how we're meant to create opportunities. So again, for you, it's knowing that like when you go about your day to day, it's not about chasing after things or trying to come up with the next idea out of thin air. It's just seeing what shows up and what you naturally respond to. Whereas for me, it's paying attention to what I feel naturally invited into and who I feel like sees me. Another piece that it really offers us that I think is probably the most useful is how we make decisions.
Yes.
So, you and I are both different types, but we are not meant to be fast decision makers. We are meant to sleep on things and mull over things and feel into things and just see what remains exciting over time. And I think this is arguably the most useful piece of our design, because we're making decisions every day, as small as like, who to spend time with, as big as like what client to say yes to, or whether to move cities, or like who to say yes to in partnership. And so it helps us understand how to make decisions in a way that's really aligned. There are honestly 1,000 other things it offers us, but those I would say are kind of the top three. How do you use your energy? How do you create opportunities? And how do you make decisions?
Oh my gosh. For me, uncovering the decision piece has been so transformative. So even in something as simple as choosing where to go for date night, like if Drew asked me, where do you want to go on a date? I like hate the open-endedness. And one of the things you told me when you were going through my design was like, if people present you options, you immediately know what you want. But if it's open-ended, it's like everything is available. It's unlimited. Like, how can I decide? And so even I like told Drew, I was like, so instead of just saying like, where do you want to go to dinner? Like, would you rather go to Lake Ave or would you rather go to Va Bene? And like immediately I know the answer to that. And so like even being able to communicate that, not just to Drew, but even to my team, like, hey, if there's an issue, what I would love for you to do is to come at me with 3 solutions. Now, there's a chance that I might not like any of your solutions, but I will have like a visceral knowing right away and just seeing the options versus saying, here's the problem. What do you want to do about it? And so like that has shifted so much for me. And then the other piece of like not making fast decisions when I am like sharing energy with someone, like you and I, we had this awesome experience. We were at a retreat and we had like a 1-hour break and you and I like looked at each other. We ran to the spot and we were like floating around in a hot tub together. Everyone else was like busy and we're like, no, this is it. This is what we need. But when we are learning how to make decisions, like if I'm in a space with somebody and sharing energy and they like present an idea to me, of course I'm like, yes, let's do it. Whatever that idea is. I need time to pause to really check in with myself of like, is that aligned? Like, does that actually match my values? Is that something I really want to spend my time and energy on? And so now lately, like whenever somebody presents something for me, I'll say like, I'm going to look at my calendar and I'll circle back with you. But really, I'm just buying myself time to sit in my own energy and make that decision that I ultimately already probably know the answer to.
Totally. And it's so funny you say that because there's also another part of our design that speaks to where we can get the most taken off track. And one of the areas that you can get the most taken off track in your design is that you are so easily and endlessly inspired that when you're having a conversation, like you said, like you can get so taken with somebody else's enthusiasm that you mistake it as your own and say yes in the moment only to walk away and realize that enthusiasm was never yours.
Oh my
and
gosh.
So I just love that you also like already discovered that. I mean, time is the solution for that, but also like it's amazing because you can be so inspired, but also knowing how to work with that to be like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, give me a moment and I can't wait to get back to you.
Yes.
And I also think what you said was so smart. Just kind of building in that buffer time makes such a difference. And some people are meant to be fast. We're just not those people.
Oh my gosh. Well, and that like makes such a huge difference. Like honestly, Erin, if everyone knew just this piece alone of like how you best make decisions, oh my gosh, it would change your life and your business.
I totally agree.
It's so interesting too, because like, you know, I've been going to masterminds for like 6 or 7 years. And when I used to go to them, my team hated when I would go to them because I'd come back with like a million ideas and like a laundry list of like, we need to do this, 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 and this. Like someone taught this and like, and I have so much learned over time of like discernment and like, I will know what is meant for me in those, like, even if I just walk away with like one idea or something. And so it's so interesting too with like, as you mature, as you get more comfortable with your own knowing and your own abilities, it totally shifts the lens that you look at things through and also how you learn. And so I love that because I like have always prided myself on being an empath, but a lot of times I can take on people's energy, good and bad.
Totally.
And so that totally makes sense because I've definitely been there before.
I think it's so useful both to know like what are our strengths, and our human design outlines that so specifically, but also where can you get the most taken off track? Because often that just like we end up making the wrong decisions and being in the wrong relationships and all the things. And so I think being aware of that helps us know how to kind of work with those sensitivities and challenges just more gracefully and more intentionally.
Okay, so I'm going to hit you with like a question that people might be thinking. So obviously if you're an entrepreneur and you have more freedom, this could really, really, really apply. But like, what if you're somebody who's in a 9 to 5 job, or you're in a role where you can't just be like, hold on, I need a day to make this decision. Like, how do we learn how to honor our design given current circumstances if they don't look as freedom based as ours do as entrepreneurs?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, and this is one of my favorite things about what I do is working with teams, because it's such a blessing to go into teams and be like, this is how they work. And they're like, oh my God, thank God my team knows that now. So I would say that, like, if you're not in an environment where you can be like, hey, ask me specific questions, or hey, I need a month to decide, or a couple of days to decide, I would just consider small ways for you to integrate your design in without, being perhaps very explicit about it. You might discover you're a projector and you need breaks. So maybe that means you like stand up from your desk like every hour or two and like get a glass of tea and then just like sit back down. Or you might discover that you're a generator who can get really easily distracted. And so you're like, okay, I'm going to like just like sit down at the top of the day, think about the 2 to 3 things I have to do, and like have that on a sticky note and anchor me throughout the day. Or you might, the specific questions piece, you might ask a colleague, just like, can you ask me these questions? I'm just having a hard time knowing what the answer is for me. So I think that there are very small ways to kind of integrate it in and meet that need. Or, you might be a manifesting generator like you, and you're multi-passionate, and you might find your other passions outside of work. You might be like, I do love my job, but I know you've been making sourdough. It's like, but I'm going to also make sure that I'm making sourdough on the weekends, and I'm gardening in the morning. So there are so many ways to meet those needs. And I think it's more about us knowing what those things are so we can find ways to honor that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. I have such a funny story for you. So I was at swimming lessons with Coco, and I kept sitting next to this mom. And we ended up sitting next to each other every week. And her poor daughter was just like bawling and like did not want to do swimming lessons. And the first thing I say to the mom is, do you know what her human design is? And the mom's like, I don't know what human design is. So no, the answer is no. And so we are literally in swimming lessons looking up her daughter's chart because I wanted to know, is it right that we should push her? I say we as in I'm co-parenting this child. Is it right that you should push her into these swimming lessons? Like, does she need to like be pushed out of her comfort zone, or is it better to really honor her personal instincts? And I feel like human design can help with that. And so it was so interesting because we were like looking it up, and I can't even remember what type the daughter was, but the woman ended up messaging me like next week, and she's like, I have gone on a whole deep dive on this. And so one of the first times that I talked to you, Erin, was when we discovered that both of my girls were manifesting generators, and that's my type as well. And I was like, oh Lordy, we are in for it. But one of the things that you said that like really stuck with me is like, your kids are going to like have a knowing, they're going to be curious. And like, if they are done with something, it's not because they're not capable of following through. It's because their passions are somewhere else. Can we talk about this a little bit? Because I can totally see this in myself as a little girl. And so now this is so helpful as a mom.
Yeah, it's, human design can be useful in almost every area of our life, but I think probably the most useful area is parenting. Because so often we are so authentically ourselves when we're young, if we're lucky, and then we get conditioned out of it, and then we return to ourselves later in life.
Yes.
And so I think when you're really giving kids permission to be who they are from day one and permission to be different than you, it's just the best thing. So let's use you as an example and your kids as an example. I have a story with a client who was a generator, and he had a manifesting generator daughter. And I remember sitting with him, and he's like, Erin, I'm just so disappointed in my daughter. He's like, he like ran track throughout like all of like middle school, high school, and like was so dedicated. And he was like, my daughter cannot choose a path. She's tried softball. She's tried lacrosse. She's tried swimming. He's like, she's just all over the place. And I feel like she has like no dedication. And I looked at her design. I was like, she's meant to be trying all the things, just like your kids, just like you. And it was such a revelation for him to realize that like nothing was wrong with her. She was doing it exactly right for her. It was just different than him. And so I think as a man with a manifesting generator child, like they're going to move fast and be messy and make mistakes and try on things and let go of things. And it's just part of their process, and it will keep being part of their process throughout their entire lives.
Yes.
And so walking away is not a flaky or lack of commitment. It's more just that like, oh, my energy wants to be somewhere else now.
Yeah.
And I think one of the best things that you can do for both of them is just keep presenting them options. Do you want to do this or this, similar to the way your team does it for you and your husband does it for you, because they will know. They often just need a thing to be presented to them to actually actually know.
It's so funny because like there was a year I literally was just looking at pictures of this where I decided I wanted to join 4-H, and like we had pet rabbits that were not purebred or anything, and my parents were like, sure, 4-H, yeah, let's do it. And like I did it for a year, and I went to the fair, and I like totally missed the memo on like the fact that your bunny should like look a certain way. Mine was like 10 times the size of everyone else's bunnies, and it was like the funniest experience. But my parents were so good at just like, sure, let's try it. And I think too, you know, nowadays, like your client, like people are like, oh, these kids can't follow through, or, you know, whatever it is. And I just think it's helpful to know that like some of us are wired differently. And like, I am still multi-passionate. Like I can't pick a lane, and I don't want to pick a lane. And so it's interesting. Like, I think what you just said is so powerful, is like, as kids, if we are able to like fully express and be ourselves, we often find that later on in our lives, we start to honor that piece of us again. And so I think that a lot of people that get into human design are on those paths of like, who was I and who am I and like, why am I this way? And I think it's so powerful.
It's so interesting. I so often sit with clients and like they don't recognize their design in the current version of their life. And we like talk about them when they're 5 and they're like, oh my God, like that was so me. I can't believe I like don't believe that anymore. And I will also just say, as a parent to a manifesting generator, I'm a very different design than her. And I think it's been so useful to know, because like, you know, one thing also for you is that you've got to use up all your energy to sleep well. Like for you to sleep well at night, it's like, you just got to get it all out, which means sometimes like late at night, you might be like, I have like a little more work to do, or I have to do a workout, whatever that thing is. And like, I'm the opposite. And I kind of want to have this like really gentle unwind with my daughter. And she's just like throwing herself all over the bed, just like getting it out. I'm like, oh, this is like exactly what she needs. Like, I got to just hold space for her. But there have been so many small examples of like, I don't want her to be like me. And her design is just helping me understand all the ways in which she's different and how to honor her specifically in that.
Oh my gosh. Last night we put this like art table in Coco's bedroom, because we're like, if you're not tired, you don't have to go to bed, but like, this is your time. And so last night she's like, I don't even want to read, Mom. I just want to like color and draw. And I was like, go for it. And, you know, it is just so interesting, like the knowing that we have of like who we are. And I just think it's so interesting because, you know, one of my team members, she's very into human design, Marissa, and we talk about it a lot. And it's interesting, as we've gotten to know each other's human designs, it has helped our conversation so much. And it's also just helped like really kind of set the stage for like just this deeper relationship of like, well, does this actually light you up? I know you could do it, but like, are you actually excited by it? Because if you're not, like, let's look at something differently. And so it's like, yeah, from motherhood to work to relationships, it's just so powerful.
It's so powerful. And I will say, even looking at the family I grew up in, I just have so much more empathy for my parents now. I was like, God, I was making you so wrong for being who you were. And like, you were just being it. And I was just like, didn't get it. So it's so useful in that way.
What are some like universal lessons or tips from human design that anyone could benefit from, regardless of their type? Like if somebody stops at the end of this episode and they don't go the next step to figure out what their design is, like what can we learn?
Yeah, I love that question. I would say that regardless of whether you dive deeper into human design, I think the lesson it teaches us is that it reminds us how different we each are. And I feel like so much friction emerges in relationships when we expect others to be similar to us or just different than what we are. We might expect them to be really fast in decision making like us when they're actually meant to be slow. We might expect them to have consistent stamina and be able to keep doing when like they can't do that and they've got to rest. We might expect them to be consistent when they're not meant to be. And so I think that it helps us understand like everyone's wired differently. And so if something's not working in your business, can you think about like, is this actually the way that works for me? If you're having friction in a relationship, have you had a conversation about like how you uniquely operate and how you can support each other? And so I think it just gives us such a permission slip in that way. And I can't tell you how many clients I've had that have taken a business course or coaching course, and they try to emulate the strategy they learned from that coach or teacher or whatever that is, only to discover it doesn't work for them. And it's just like they feel like something's wrong with them when like it just wasn't the strategy for them. And so it just reminds us we are all wired so differently. And the more we lean into our differences, the more connected we'll feel, but also the more flow and success we'll find in our lives.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I couldn't agree with that more. And I think we all feel that. Like, I think we feel this division. And I think that it's almost being like weaponized against us these days of like, people are tending to put themselves into echo chambers. And I don't think that's how we're meant to operate. I think we need all the different types of people in our lives, all the different decision makers in our lives. And
Yes.
so I think what's so beautiful about it is it like empowers us to like honor and accept other people's differences. And one of the things that I think is so powerful about how you teach it and just like my experience with you is like the more you honor your design, like the more life you live, like the more fullness of life you get to experience. And I think a lot of people are finding themselves where they're like, is this it? Like,
Yeah.
this really it? Like, is this what I'm working so hard for? Or is this like what being an adult is like? And I don't know. It's so interesting because these days, like, I love my life so much more than I love my work.
Yeah.
And it's been this very interesting, period of introspection, but like of what excites me and what lights me up. And for the first time in over a decade, it's not necessarily just the work I'm doing and the money I make through the work.
Yeah.
And I think so much of that is like coming back home to like who I was as a kid and like what lit me up and like coming back to those iterations.
Well, I love that so much because I think, our human design doesn't tell us like where we're going to be in 5 years
Yeah.
or whether we're going to meet a partner. It just helps us know like what is your operating system and how can you really work with it instead of against it. And so in that way, it can serve as an anchor throughout our life to just keep us on track. And so for you, it's just knowing like what is the thing that's giving me life right now. And like it might not be the thing that was giving me life 6 months ago or a week ago or 5 years ago, but how can I just keep leaning into that, knowing it's moving me in the right direction? And I've really felt that as well. And I think becoming a mother changes a lot for a lot of people. But I think for me, it's like, oh, like my life is changing, but my design like makes sure that I'm like moving in the right direction, even if it's not one I expected and not one that I like necessarily want, but I actually know it's correct. And so I love that. I think that like it is an anchor through transitions in a way that I think can be really helpful for people.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I just think too it's like if you are someone feeling that tension of like you're not in the right place or you're not enjoying your life right now or you're curious about like where you're going to go, seeing like how you make decisions. Like maybe you're
Yeah.
just in the entirely wrong environment to make the most meaningful decisions that you actually need to make.
Yeah.
Or understanding like what lights you up or even understanding like how you work. There are like members on my team who like they are like night owls. Like I will get a Slack at like 6 a.m. and like they haven't slept and I'm like, that is not me. And like we
Yeah.
have learned how to honor each other's like work styles to really like allow people to like do their best work. And so
Yes.
it's almost like this deconstruction of the way we've been told to do things. And
Yeah.
this like invitation to like create something that like actually feels good. Like you actually enjoy doing it. And I think that's what so many
Yeah.
people want in their lives.
And I think that like I think that's what human design offers us as well. Is I've had so many clients that like have actually built really successful businesses, but like it just doesn't feel right anymore, and maybe
Yeah.
it never did. And
Yeah.
so I think what it helps us do is like how can we build things that not only succeed and in ways that we maybe didn't expect, but also just like feel good and feel sustainable and feel right.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think that human design can be a useful thing to look at any point. It can validate the path you're on is amazing, or it can call out all the ways in which you're not aligned. But I
Yeah,
do
let's
find,
talk about that
yeah.
alignment piece because, we're talking about like living in alignment. Can you explain like what this means and how, if somebody does feel like this is not aligned, like how we can start living more aligned with our design and just in our lives?
So when I think of living in alignment, it's really just like living as yourself. You know what I mean? It's parenting as Jenna and building a business as Jenna and like just like filling your days in a way that feels Jenna,
Yeah.
and whatever it is. So, and I think when we're not aligned, we can often look at our design and be like, oh, I see why. Like when I look at my design, I'm like, oh, I'm so prone to overworking. I'm doing too much. I have no rest in my life. Or like, I'm actually way more concerned with proving myself than anything else. And obviously that's burning me out, or I'm trying to be this thing, or I'm being really rash about my decisions when I'm meant to be slow. And so it will just call you out and it will just give you like those sweet nudges to be like, you've got nothing to prove. You've got to build rest into every single day. Like sleep on your decisions. Like you're not here to be a doer. And so I think it is a very gentle permission slip to guide us back on. And I think what I will say about my own experience of human design is that like I am pulled off track and out of alignment almost every day. But because I know exactly what that looks like and where I'm most vulnerable,
Yeah.
I also know exactly how to get back on. And so I think that's why my design is so useful. It's like, oh, I see I'm doing the thing again, but I know what the thing is. And so I'm coming back, you know? And like, oh, I see why this partnership didn't work or this thing didn't work because like the way I approached it was actually so opposite of who I am. And so I think it helps us understand all those areas we can get pulled out of alignment so we can just keep coming back over and over again.
Yes. Oh my gosh. One other thing I was just thinking about is like, I was just talking to my mom about this the other day because I'm like, Mom, you lived in the golden era of parenting where like there wasn't tons of advice. Your parenthood wasn't being judged in a certain way. Like, you know, you
Yeah.
lived in the era of preservative foods where that was like the good thing. But, you know, nowadays it's like our level of consciousness has expanded, I would say,
Yeah.
and our desire to like get it right has grown. And with that, there is so much information out. You know, earlier I was
Yeah.
doing a coaching session with somebody, and I said to her before we went into this, I said, I want you to put everything I say through your lens. Like, I am not God. I might get it wrong. I might give you terrible advice that doesn't work for you. And I said, I don't want you to lose your lens in this. And I think that something that has happened is that we have
Yeah.
lost our lens, right? Like we have lost this level of discernment. We have lost the filter that we put things through of like, does this fit? Like, does this feel right for me?
Yeah.
Whether it's parenthood advice or business advice or anything in between.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I feel like we are this first generation growing up in this information age. The other day, Coco was like, Mom, can you Google if worms have eyes? And like, I was like, our kids just know that like we have information at our fingertips, right? But what we've lost in that is that personal lens of like, does this resonate? And
Yeah.
I have been given, I mean, I've sat in so many different masterminds. I've given so much advice on like, you can do this, you can do this, you should do this, do it this way, do it this way, this will be better. And I think that so much of my success has come when I put everything through my lens and my own filter of like, does that feel right? Like, is that in alignment with what I want? And I just think we've kind of lost that. Do you agree?
Oh my God, 100%. You know, and I think it's been very much, we've been guided by like what we think we should be doing and not what actually feels right. And I think human design is one tool to help us trust ourselves. Like for you, for example, like you're just a gut-based decision maker in general. And so like you can hear all the things and be like that one, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And like that thing might have worked for 1,000 other people, but it's not for me.
Yep.
And so it's like giving ourselves permission to be like, how can we discover the thing that actually works for us? Which is why the decision making piece in human design is so useful for exactly that reason. Is like, how can we parse through all this information we're receiving and assess what's actually meant for us? Because it's impossible for it to all be for us.
Yes. Okay. I need you to tell everyone about how they can explore their human design further. You guys, I cannot express how transformative this tool and what Erin does is. And I was so fortunate to be in a mastermind where she did human design readings for all of us. And like, it was just so cool to like hear not only our own designs, but also other people's and be like, oh yes, this tracks. So what is the next step for somebody who's curious about this?
The first thing to do is just to look up your design,
Yeah.
you know, just to discover what is your type. You can go to jennakutcher.com/human design. And when you go there, you can also get a free summary. So you can get a free 1-page summary and just see like, how's that land? Does it resonate? Does it feel like it speaks to a part of you or does it feel like totally off, you know? So I would start there because that will give you the basics. If you want to go in and learn all the things, we have something that we've worked on together called the Blueprint Guide. And it basically is a book all about your unique design. It's hyper personalized to you. There are hundreds of thousands of possible guides, but it basically gives you practical insights about how to work with every single part of your design. Not in a super jargonful language, but very much to the point. This is how you do this best. These are tools to actually work with it. So if you want kind of your own operating manual, I would definitely recommend that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I use my guide that you created for me all of the time. And when I'm frustrated, when I'm feeling really excited, when I'm feeling stuck, when I'm overwhelmed, when I'm stressed, I'm like, okay, like, and it's just funny because I'm like, just speak to me, like open to a page. And I'm like, oh, yep, that makes sense. And so it's just, I think it's just such beautiful work. And I do believe that so many of us are asking those questions of like, who am I? And like, why am I this way? Or why does this not work? Or
Yeah.
does not feel right? And I just feel like you can go within to find so many of those answers. And human design is an amazing tool to kind of call you back to who you are and who you've always been. And oh, I just love the work you do, Erin.
Yay. Well, yeah, that is definitely the best place. And also, I will say many people get their guides printed out with their kids and just put them on their bedside table and do exactly what you do. Just like open it to a page and be like, oh, yes, got it. Just to kind of remember who you are.
Yes. Erin, where can everybody find out more about you and connect with you? Give us all the places.
On Instagram, I'm at Erin Claire Jones and Human Design Blueprint, and that's the best place.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I cannot wait to hear the stories of everyone who is going to get their guide and just look deeper within who they are. I'm so excited.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I am honestly just so excited for you to get to know you better. I feel like this journey I've been on over the last few years has really just been uncovering who I've always been and rediscovering who I am. And human design has played a huge role in this for me. And Erin's work has just been like having a guidebook to what I already know to be true about myself, and just this compass of like coming back home to myself and the way that I best work, operate, decide, and move forward. And so I'm just so excited for you to start this journey and embark on this journey of getting to know who you are and why you are the way you are on a whole new level. Again, if you go to jennakutcher.com/human design, you can get your personalized blueprint guide. Plus, you can get that bonus. I created that awesome vision board exercise. This is how to make the woo meet the work, how to manifest, but then also make these things happen for yourselves. And I'm just so excited to toss that in because I truly believe in Erin's work and I have personally experienced the transformation that it brings. jennakutcher.com/human design. Thank you so much, Gold Diggers, for listening to another episode of the podcast. Until next time, keep on digging your biggest goals.